I wasn't supposed to be there that long. Just a quick favor, my mom said, check the leaking sink while she was out of town. Simple, harmless. But the moment she opened the door, the air shifted. Her name was Elena. My mom's friend. Mid-40s, maybe, though the kind of woman who carried her age like a secret she didn't need to explain. Her hair was tied back in a loose knot, wisps falling along her face, and she had that calm, guarded smile people wear when they're not sure how much of themselves to reveal. Your mom said you'd come, she said, stepping aside. Didn't think it'd be you, though. Her tone wasn't dismissive, more surprised. Like she hadn't pictured me grown, taller, older, not the kid she remembered running through our backyard years ago. The house smelled faintly of coffee and lemon polish. It was neat, but not staged, a jacket left on the couch, books open on the table. I dropped my backpack near the entry and followed her toward the kitchen. Pipes under here, she said, crouching to point. She knelt with practiced ease, her blouse shifting just slightly, and I looked away too quickly, pretending to examine the wrench that I'd brought. I didn't say much while I worked. The sound of water dripping into the bucket filled the silence. She talked more than I did, little things, about how she tried to fix it herself, how the week had been longer than usual. Her voice was warm, textured, the kind that lingers even after the words fade. At one point, she leaned against the counter and watched me. I felt it before I saw it, that attention, heavier than casual. You've changed, she said finally. I almost laughed. Since when? Last week? Since the last time I really looked, she murmured, almost too quiet. I tightened the valve harder than I needed, heat rushing into my face. My hands worked, but my mind spun. What did she mean by that? When the pipe stopped leaking, I wiped my hands on a rag. She handed me a glass of water, fingers brushing mine a second too long. Neither of us pulled back fast enough. The house seemed too still. Even the clock in the hallway ticked louder. Thank you, she said, softer now. I didn't expect, well, never mind. Her eyes lingered, and for a second I felt older, heavier, caught between the boy she remembered and the man standing in front of her. I set the glass down carefully, not trusting my grip. It's nothing. Just a sink. But she shook her head, a shadow of a smile forming. Some things aren't nothing. The silence that followed pressed in, her looking at me like she shouldn't, me looking back like I couldn't stop. My chest tightened, and I didn't know if I should step back or closer. Then, the moment shifted. She broke the stare, moved past me toward the hallway, her shoulder brushing mine in a way that wasn't accidental. Lock the door when you leave, she said, voice steady but low. I turned, heart racing, waiting for her to look back. And just before she disappeared down the hall, she did, a glance over her shoulder that lasted too long. And then, with that look, everything ordinary about the night cracked open. I should have left. That would have been the normal thing. Fix the sink, grab my bag, say goodbye, and lock the door like she asked. But something in that glance over her shoulder pinned me there. The house felt different now. Quieter, like it was holding its breath. I sat at the table for a moment, pretending to check my phone, but really just listening, the creak of the floorboards, the muted sound of water running in another room. When she came back, she wasn't the same woman who'd greeted me at the door. Her hair was loose now, the knot undone, strands falling naturally against her cheek. She had changed into something softer, a faded sweater that hung off one shoulder. The kind of thing you don't wear for company. You didn't leave, she said, almost smiling. You didn't tell me I had to. I countered. That earned a real smile, small, but it stayed. She poured herself coffee and leaned against the counter, cradling the mug with both hands. My divorce papers came through last week, she said suddenly, like she was testing the sound of the words. 18 years, and it's just over. Her voice wasn't steady. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw the weight beneath her calm. A trace of exhaustion around her eyes, the way her thumb kept circling the rim of the mug. I didn't know, I said quietly. No one does. Not really. Your mom thinks I'm fine. Everyone does. She laughed without humor, taking a sip of coffee. But fine is exhausting. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to step closer, to take the mug from her hands just to stop them from shaking. Instead, I stayed at the table, gripping the edge too tightly. She set the mug down and crossed her arms, looking at me. It's strange. You remind me of. She stopped herself, shook her head. Never mind. I leaned forward before I could think better of it. Of what? Her eyes met mine, steady but conflicted. Of something I shouldn't want to remember. The words hit harder than I expected. My pulse thudded in my ears. I told myself to look away, to let the silence pass, but instead I noticed everything. The way she bit the inside of her lip, the faint line of her collarbone showing where the sweater slipped, the tiny gold band she still wore on her right hand even though her marriage was over. This wasn't supposed to happen. She was my mom's friend. She was older. She was hurting. But none of those reasons made it easier to ignore the pull in my chest. She must have felt it too, because when she moved closer, it wasn't casual. Her hand brushed my arm as she reached for the glass I'd left on the table. She could have gone around, but she didn't. Her fingers lingered just enough to blur the line between accident and choice. You don't have to rush off, she said, voice low, almost fragile. Stay a little longer. My throat tightened. 100 answers came to mind, but none made it out. Instead, I just nodded, and her hand stayed on my arm a second longer than it should have. And in that second, leaving stopped being an option. The living room was dim, just one lamp glowing in the corner. I told myself I was only staying a few more minutes, but every minute stretched longer than it should. She sat across from me, knees drawn up on the couch, one hand resting absently on her ankle. The sweater slipped lower on her shoulder, and she didn't fix it. I tried not to stare. Tried not to wonder if she knew what it did to me. You know what's strange? She asked suddenly, her voice quiet, like she was afraid of saying it too loudly. What? My throat was dry. You listen. Most people don't. They just wait for their turn to talk. But you really hear things. Her eyes caught mine, and it felt like a weight landed squarely on my chest. No one had said that to me before. Not in that way. I shifted forward, elbows on my knees. Maybe you just don't give yourself enough credit. People probably notice more than you think. She gave a small laugh, shaking her head. If they do, they never say. Her voice trailed off, softer now. Except you. The silence afterward was sharp, like standing too close to the edge of a drop. I wanted to lean in, to say more, to admit what had been buzzing under my skin since the moment I walked in, but then her phone lit up on the table. The screen glowed with a name I didn't recognize. She glanced at it, her jaw tightening, then flipped it face down without answering. Work? I asked, trying to steady my voice. Ex-husband, she said flatly, like the words left a bitter taste. He doesn't get to decide when I pick up anymore. I nodded, but the air between us shifted. She looked raw, exposed, like admitting that had cost her something. And then it happened, not planned, not thought through. She leaned sideways, reaching for the remote, and her hand brushed against my knee. It was nothing, it should have been nothing, but neither of us moved away right away. Her breath caught, barely audible. Mine wasn't any steadier. I leaned back slightly, trying to pull the moment apart, to give us both space. But my chest ached with the effort of pretending I didn't want to lean closer instead. You should probably tell me to go, I said, my voice lower than I meant. She looked at me then, not hurried, not flustered, but steady. Like she'd already made a choice she wasn't ready to say out loud. I could, she whispered. Her fingers pressed gently against my knee, not enough to claim anything, just enough to keep me there. The clock ticked in the corner. Neither of us moved. And for the first time, I didn't know if we were about to stop, or finally cross the line we'd both been pretending wasn't there. I don't know who moved first. Maybe it was me, maybe her, maybe it didn't matter. The space between us dissolved until I could feel the warmth of her body from where I sat. Her hand was still on my knee. It should have felt casual, a friendly touch, nothing more. But the way her fingers lingered, the way her thumb brushed once, slowly, across the fabric of my jeans, it said everything she hadn't. You know this isn't. I started, then stopped. Isn't what? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Safe. My throat tightened. For you. For me. For anyone. She laughed once, bitter and quiet. Safe stopped mattering to me a long time ago. The words knocked something loose in me. I turned toward her fully, searching her face for any sign of hesitation. But all I saw was the shine in her eyes, not from tears exactly, but from holding too much in for too long. Elena. I said her name like it meant something I wasn't allowed to say. She held my gaze steady, unblinking. Tell me the truth, she whispered. I froze. My pulse was in my throat, my chest, everywhere. The truth about what? About what you're thinking right now. The room felt too small, too warm. The words clawed their way up before I could stop them. That I haven't been able to stop looking at you since I walked in. Her lips parted slightly, but she didn't look away. You shouldn't say that. I know. I let out a shaky breath. But it's worse keeping it in. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, thrumming, alive. She leaned in, close enough that I could see the faintest line at the corner of her mouth, close enough to feel the whisper of her breath on my skin. For a moment, I thought she would close the distance. I thought we'd finally collapse into the thing both of us had been circling around since the sink, since the glass of water, since the look in the hallway. But then, a knock at the door. We both froze. Her hand jerked back, her breath caught. My body felt like it had been plunged into ice water. She didn't move to answer. Neither did I. The knock came again, louder this time. Finally, she whispered, Don't. Don't what? I asked. Don't leave. Her voice cracked, just enough to make my chest ache. The knocking stopped, and the house was silent again. We sat there, facing each other, the air between us charged to the breaking point. And then she asked the question that made everything collapse into silence. Do you want this as much as I do? I didn't answer. I couldn't. But I didn't look away either. Her question hung between us like a lit match, ready to burn through everything. Do you want this as much as I do? I couldn't answer. My throat locked, my heart pounding too loud in the silence. Before I could even try, her phone buzzed again on the table. This time she didn't flip it over. She stared at the screen, her face tightening, and then she said something that cracked the moment wide open. It's your mom. My stomach dropped. I stared at her, waiting for her to explain, but she didn't. She just let the words sit there, heavy, damning. My mom was calling her. Right now. Why would she? I started, but Elena shook her head. She doesn't know, she said quickly, almost defensively. She thinks I'm lonely. She checks in. Sometimes too much. The phone buzzed again, then stopped. The silence afterward was worse than the ringing. I tried to swallow, my mind racing. So she talks to you about me? Elena's eyes flicked away. She still thinks of you as a kid. She tells me things. How you're restless, how you don't fit the way she thought you would, how you need someone to. She cut herself off, biting her lip hard. I leaned forward. To what? Her voice cracked. To see you. To really see you. And she doesn't know she's been handing me all the pieces. The words landed like a blow. Suddenly the room felt exposed, dangerous, like my mom herself could walk through the door at any second and see what was happening between us. I pushed back in my chair, trying to steady myself. So what? This isn't just about tonight. You've been, what, thinking about this? About me? Her face tightened with regret, but she didn't deny it. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it. But then you walked in and... She stopped herself again, shaking her head. The confession lit something in me I didn't know I'd been waiting for. My pulse wouldn't slow, my chest felt too tight, but I couldn't let it go. Elena, I said, my voice sharper now. You should have told me. Her eyes snapped back to mine, wet but fierce. And what would you have done? Walked out? Pretended you didn't feel it too? I froze. The anger drained out of me as quickly as it came, leaving only the raw truth I couldn't deny. I don't want to pretend, I admitted. Not anymore. The silence that followed was dangerous. She exhaled, slow, shaky, like the weight of years pressed against her chest. Then she stood, crossed the room, and stopped right in front of me. Then you have to choose, she whispered. Her hand hovered, just inches from mine, trembling but deliberate. If you stay, nothing goes back to the way it was. The clock ticked once, loud in the silence. And I realized the twist wasn't just her secret, it was the choice I had to make now. Her hand hovered between us, trembling but steady enough to mean it. If you stay, nothing goes back to the way it was. The words sank into me, heavy and sharp. My chest felt tight, my pulse restless. I looked at her hand, then at her face. Her eyes weren't daring me, they were pleading, but also warning. Elena, I whispered, this isn't simple. Of course it isn't. She gave a shaky laugh, brushing a strand of hair back behind her ear. Do you think I don't know what this looks like? Your mom's friend, twice your age, fresh out of a divorce. I shouldn't even be saying this. But, she cut herself off, and for the first time, her voice broke. But I can't keep pretending. Something inside me cracked open. All the weeks I'd been drifting, feeling unseen, unheard, she had noticed. She had carried it in silence. And now it was spilling out between us, raw and unguarded. I stood slowly, closing the small distance between us. So what do we do? She looked up at me, eyes shining, lips parting like she might answer, but then nothing came out. Instead, she reached up, her fingers grazing my jawline with the lightest touch, as if testing whether this moment was real. I keep telling myself I should walk away, she said. That I should let you live your life without me complicating it. Her hand trembled against my skin. But every time I try to step back, I find myself wanting you closer. My breath caught. I covered her hand with mine, pressing it more firmly against my face. Then don't step back. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, afraid, wanting. You don't know what you're asking. Yes, I do. My voice was low, but steady. I'm asking you not to hide from this anymore. The air between us cracked open. I thought she would pull away, but she didn't. She leaned in until her forehead rested lightly against mine. We stood there in silence, both of us shaking, either moving past that fragile line. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't some sweeping romance. It was two people breathing the same uneven breath, terrified of the world outside that living room, but unable to deny what was between them anymore. Her voice was a whisper against my lips. If we do this, it's ours. No one else's. I nodded, eyes closed. A secret worth keeping. The words hung there, unfinished but enough. And then, finally, she kissed me. Slow, hesitant, not polished, but real. A confession made not with words, but with the way her hands gripped the back of my shirt like she couldn't let go. When we pulled apart, both of us unsteady, she didn't smile. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me with something deeper than either of us had dared to name until now. And I knew, whatever happened next, we had crossed the line together. The kiss ended, but the silence after felt just as loud. She stepped back first, only a fraction, her hand still resting against my chest. I could feel her heartbeat through her palm, too fast, too uneven. Maybe it matched mine. Elena, I whispered because I didn't know what else to say. Her lips parted like she wanted to answer, but then she shook her head. We can't pretend this didn't happen. I nodded slowly. I don't want to pretend. Her eyes softened, but there was a flicker of fear there too. She walked past me, pacing toward the window, tugging the sleeve of her sweater like she needed something to hold on to. My life, it's been breaking apart piece by piece for years, she said, her voice quieter than before. The marriage, the expectations, the way everyone looks at me like I should be stronger. And then you showed up. And I hated how much I needed that. How much I needed you. I let the words sit between us. They weren't pretty. They weren't safe. But they were true. You don't have to hate it, I said finally. You just have to decide if it matters enough. She turned, her expression fragile in a way I'd never seen before. And what about you? You'll wake up tomorrow and realize you should have walked out. That this was a mistake. I stepped closer, shaking my head. No. I'll wake up tomorrow and remember that, for once, someone saw me. Really saw me. That doesn't feel like a mistake. Her eyes glistened, and this time when she smiled, it wasn't polished or guarded. It was tired, messy, but honest. She came back to me then, not rushing, not dramatic, just walking until we were face to face again. Her hand slipped into mine, small and deliberate. So what do we do? She asked, voice trembling. I squeezed her hand gently. We keep it ours. For now. No explanations. No apologies. Just us. She exhaled, a shaky laugh breaking through the tension. Some secrets really are worth keeping. I smiled back, and in that moment, the weight of everything, the sink, the glance in the hallway, the knock at the door, the divorce, the fear, it all folded into this fragile, undeniable truth: we had chosen each other. It wasn't a perfect ending. It wasn't the kind you see in movies. But it was ours. And that was enough. And that's how it happened. The night I stayed when I should have walked away. The night her walls cracked, and my silence broke. The night a secret became a promise. Now it's yours to hold too. So tell me, did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?